I'm right now in the Azure Cosmos DB Emulator on Windows. If you are on Mac, or if you have installed this one on the Docker container and you are opening on Mac, or if you are using the Azure account, Cosmos DB account in the Azure portal, you are going to see somehow the same thing. So we are going to start by creating a new database. So on Azure, each Azure account contains multiple databases, and each database contains a set of containers. So basically our database would be called expenses tracker DB, something like that. Provision throughput, okay. Auto scale, we need it to auto scale, and database max RU per second, which is the request units per second. This is the currency of Cosmos DB. So this is basically the unit that's being used to measure your how much that's going to cost, and this is one of the scalability, like how many requests per units your database can handle per second. We are going to set it to the minimum, which is I think 400 per second. I'm going to put some values. Okay, it's 4000. Okay, cool. So right now you can set the request per units over all the database or over each container. So it's up to you. So right now you have expenses tracker DB. Let's click over here and add a new container, and let me zoom in just a little bit so you can see the screen better. We will use the existing database. The container ID is going to be called wallets. This is the container that we are going to use to implement the wallets. And the partitioning key, okay, the partitioning key is a very interesting question, or a very interesting part. This is the key that we are going to be used to basically determine the performance and the cost of your Cosmos DB, because the Cosmos DB or NoSQL databases could be scaled horizontally on multiple servers through multiple partitions. So Cosmos DB engine automatically actually creating partitions for your container based on the partitioning key that you define over here. So the partitioning key, you can define any property you want, and you can define a property that consists from composite values, like you concatenate 2 or more, 3 values at once to have. So basically each container, you should pick the partitioning key that actually stays for that doesn't have like a single value, so all your items in the container have the same value, because this one will lead to have a single huge partition. And at the same time, you shouldn't use someone like with a GUID or like value that's not repeatable at all. So in this case, you're going to have too many partitions with a very small amount of data, which is, you need to find balance between having a partitioning key that actually works among multiple like having multiple partitions. Each one has a set. But the thing is that with this, we are going to talk more about partitioning key when we are going to create the transactions container, because the wallets container is not that big deal, as every container, like every user will have 3 up to 5 wallets. And I'm thinking about, if the user wants to have more than wallets, then he has to upgrade his account, and he will have like maximum of 10 wallets. So if there is like, this one is, it's not a big deal, and it's going to be always a very small container, and it will not have too much data. So basically the partitioning key we're going to use is the user ID. So user ID, each user ID has his own wallets, and they are partitioned in one place. So that makes sense, because also the partitioning affects the query. So when you run a query, if you run a query against single partition, that's amazing. It's going to give you a better performance, because most of the time this partition is going to be on a single server. And user ID is perfect, because actually all our queries is going to be against one user. Like my account, we're not going to fetch data from your account or from another user account. So basically my account will only fetch data from my user ID. So for wallets, we're going to use user ID. But for the transactions container, there is a different story, and we are going much deeper into what partitioning key is and how we are going to fetch just the right one. And we are going to have a long whiteboard session that explaining to you what's going on. But for now, let's use the user ID for the wallets. And yeah, this is it. So basically, let's hit OK and have your first container created for Azure Cosmos DB. That's amazing, actually, because Right now you can notice the difference between this one and SQL Server database. Like in SQL Server, you have to create a table and you have to define your columns before you even get started, and maybe whenever you want to change anything, you need to handle all this kind of things and the data migration and stuff like that. But here, it's a JSON document. If you hit a new item, look at that. It's just a JSON document, so you can add any property you want. And any property you add, it's indexed automatically. So basically, you can query that with your query. So let's set an ID. I will go over here to the terminal. Where is my terminal? And I will call a new GUID and bring an ID, set it over here. But basically, there is a difference between I think online you don't have to specify the ID, it's going to specify that ID for you. The other property that we are going to have is type. And types, I'm going to make those types like hard-coded. We can create a container for them, but it's not needed, as they are like, we're going to have bank accounts, PayPal, and if you can document some of that, maybe you can throw them in the comments on the Discord channel that you can find the link in the description box. And maybe crypto wallets. I'm not sure if you're interested in that for now, but for this one, for example, I'm going to type bank, and then here we are going to have, this is the powerful of NoSQL database, that bank wallet is going to be different than the PayPal wallet or like any other or cash wallet, because bank will have some details. Maybe you can call it like bank name. You have your bank name over here, so I'm going to call it like bank X, and then we have like maybe if you want to add your bank details over here so they are easy to be shared, or you have them, you can add that. Maybe you don't need to do so, but ABAN Swift and what else do we need? Like account type, saving or current, so we are going to call that savings, saving account. That's very good. The other property that we need, of course, is the user ID. For all our local development, we are going to use the user ID like test or user ID. This is the value we are going to use for the user ID. But when we are going to go online, we are going to fetch the user ID from the Azure Active Directory B2C, and we are going to fetch that from the access token. But for now, for development, you are going to always use the user ID, which represents like just, yeah, you can consider this as a user ID. And yeah, what else? I think maybe we can use the property balance. So if you wanna balance just like that, and it contains like 200 of something, and we have, of course, currency. Currency is very important, and we are going to set that for like USD or Euro or whatever you want. Let's use the USD. That's very good. So let's hit the save, and as you can see, we have added, actually, this is our first document. It has been added. This is the user ID, this is the balance, this is the currency, this is the Swift, account type, and stuff like that. Here, as you can see, there is some other property that has been added. Like those are like, we have the timestamp, and we have reference ID. Those are I will mention the documents for those in the comment section for the document from the Microsoft documentation, because we want to save time and not make this session very long by adding another one. And I will use bring another GUID and put it over here. This one is going to be PayPal. So basically, look at the difference. I'm using the same container. So type, it's going to be PayPal account, and we have user name, in PayPal that has a user. I will call it paypal.user. This is the user ID. And of course, we need the user ID. This is our partitioning key. It's required for this document that the user ID is, and as we have agreed, it's the value of user ID. And we need the currency, which is like, I'll use USD as well. And any other kind of types you want to define for PayPal. Yeah, we need the balance, of course. We are always forgetting that, which is 0.00. Okay, that's very good. So right now we have this actually, come on, available for us over here. So this is all what we need for the PayPal. So as you can see, we have many different properties on the same container. This is the power of NoSQL. So we have created two items for this user, and right now we are going to create a new query just to show you, like, this query, select star from C, which indicates like the container, because we are executing this query against the wallet's containers. If I hit execute selection, look at that, we have this stuff over here, like it's a JSON document. That's amazing, right? So let's do some let's retrieve only stuff for this user. So we can say where C dot user ID equals user ID, and then let's hit execute, and you can see it's going to be the same result, but right now we filtered only because we're going to have wallets for all the users, and right now we are retrieved only for like this user, supposedly, but the one, and we want to have retrieve only the bank accounts of the user. So we're going to type equals bank. Let's hit execute, and look at that. That's amazing, right? That's this is something very powerful. We have a lot of functions and a lot of stuff. I will also mention the link to learn more about that in the description box. But for now, our function, actually the list wallets function, what it's going to do, it is just going to execute this query and retrieve the associated result to the client. This is all it's going to do. So our task right now is to go to the code and implement the interface and implement the repository and set up the Azure Cosmos DB in the code, then create the DTO and make this function just actually execute this query and retrieve the associated data for the client. And that's it. We are very close to having the first functionality works perfectly in the code. So I hope you enjoyed this and you have created your first container. And so thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.